Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar hosted by the Organization Development and Change Workforce Education and Development Program at Penn State. This is a monthly webinar series presented during our lunch hour. My name is Marcia Ruimel, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Workforce Education and Development Program at the Pennsylvania State University. I will be moderating today's webinar alongside with my colleagues, Halima Hatta, who is a PhD student in the Workforce Education Program at Penn State, and Adia Waterton, a part-time marketing specialist. Regarding this interactive format for this webinar, please use the chat feature on the Zoom platform. If you have any questions about the presentation, please use the chat feature on Zoom. You can see the chat button on the bottom of the screen. The Q&A session will be at the end of the presentation. Our online Masters of Professional Studies in Organization Development and Change is designed for professionals who need the skills and knowledge to effectively lead change in their organization. Furthermore, there is a master's and PhD program in workforce education and development with a concentration in human resource development and organization development. Our program has created a continuous monthly free webinar series with experts from around the world. Today, we are presenting Radical Purpose for Good, AI and the Future of Work, presented by Edward Corbell. Edward Corbell is a practitioner and also a doctoral student in OD, Organization Development and Change, and Effectiveness at the Sacred Heart University. His work focuses on improving the quality of life for individuals, teams, organizations, and communities through value science and practice, helping scholars and practitioners explore what it means for their work to create meaningful impact. For more information about Edward Corbell's bio, please visit today's webinar on our Eventbrite page. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our speaker of today, Edward. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Happy Friday, everybody. I realize this is a lunchtime here for us, and people are joining from all over the world, and welcome. I ask that you just be open and curious, and just listen in, and latch on to something that resonates from what we're going to discuss today. And we'll answer any questions at the end, and always open for a follow-up conversation afterwards. Again, I'm a doctoral candidate in organization development, change, and effectiveness at Sacred Heart University. And my work lives at the intersection of relationships, work, and ideas. Today's conversation is titled Radical Purpose for Good, AI and the Future of Work. And I want to be upfront with you. This isn't a talk about the latest AI tools or a checklist of best practices. It's an invitation to ask a deeper question, to slow down a bit, a more fundamental question, one that I believe our field is uniquely positioned and urgently needed to answer. Today's journey. Here's what we'll cover together. And mind you, I've spent the past 8 years doing a deep dive in some of the things that I will be sharing today. So please, again, just listen into something that might resonate and stick with you, and would love to continue the dialogue around anything that you're curious about. There's 5 movements that I want to cover here. We'll define radical purpose, identify the core purpose of AI, workforce education, HR, organization development change, explore the scientific definition of good through formal axiology, apply that framework across each domain, and then open it up for discussion. Again, this is a conversation, not a lecture. If something resonates or sparks a question, put it in the chat. I'll weave it in at the end as we do a Q&A. First, I want to open it up with a good question, multiple questions. Before we get into frameworks and models, I want to start with that question that sounds deceptively simple, but I promise it's not. What does it mean to be good? Not what does it mean to be effective? Not what does it mean to comply with standards? Not even what does it mean to be successful? I'm asking about goodness as a property, a characteristic, an attribute, as something we can actually define. Because here's the thing. Every decision we make in AI, in workforce education, in HR, and in OD and change is implicitly an answer to that question. But most of us have never been asked to answer it explicitly. Today, we will do that. In the first section, we'll go over radical purpose. What is it, and why does it matter now? So let's start with the word radical, because I want to clear up some of the noise and negative connotations it tends to carry. The word comes from the Latin radix, which simply means root. To be radical is to be rooted, foundational, essential. So radical purpose is not about being extreme. It's about going to the root question. Why does this exist? What is it fundamentally for? What does it need to be fully and completely to be truly good? Think of it this way. A tree that is uprooted is not freed. It's dying. Organizations and professions that lose touch with their foundational purpose are in the same danger. Radical purpose keeps us rooted. Radical purpose is fundamental and deeply rooted, not a trend, not a branding exercise, the genuine reason for being, for existing. Radical purpose is transformative, not incremental. Radical purpose doesn't tinker at the margins. It asks, what needs to fundamentally change? Radical purpose is bold. It's disruptive and values aligned. It names what is truly at stake, challenges what always has been assumed, and aligns action with what is genuinely valuable. So what's the framework look like? Radical purpose is a practical framework. For scholars, radical purpose provides a conceptual grounding, a way to frame research questions that matter, connect disciplines that too often operate in silos, and evaluate findings against what is genuinely valuable rather than merely what is measurable. For practitioners, it's a compass for strategy and leadership. When you're navigating complexity, ambiguity, a new technology, a disrupted workforce, radical purpose asks, are our decisions moving us toward what is fundamentally good or just towards a quick fix? And I want you to ponder this, okay, and bring this towards the end of the session and in our Q&A. In the chat, what one word would you use to describe the radical purpose of your own work? What are you fundamentally here to do? Why now? The AI imperative, it's ubiquitous, it's all around us. So why does this conversation matter right now more than ever? A few data points worth sitting with, and I'm sure you've all heard them in some way. Goldman Sachs estimates that over 300 million jobs globally could be affected by AI by 2030. That's not just a labor market statistic. That's a human story yet to be told. McKinsey's 2024 research shows 85% of organizational leaders call AI a top strategic priority. The investment is already happening. And yet, fewer than 25% of organizations have an AI ethics framework in place, according to Gartner. We're building at scale before we've answered the question of purpose. Here's the core tension. AI adoption is accelerating faster than our frameworks for understanding its purpose and value. Without radical purpose, without pausing, without asking what AI is fundamentally for, technology becomes a tool in search of a goal and contributes to societal and organizational drift. Workforce education, HR, and OD and change are not bystanders at this moment. We are the field's best equipped to ask and help answer the purpose question. That is our radical purpose in this moment. From radical purpose to core purpose, what is the essential reason for each of these domains to exist? What's the core purpose of AI? AI gets reduced constantly to efficiency, cost savings, automation, and competitive advantage. And yes, it delivers on all of those. But those are capabilities, not purposes. They're what AI can do. They don't tell us what AI is for. The radical purpose of AI, the reason we should build it, deploy it, and evaluate it, is to augment human capability and judgment, to enable more equitable access to insight and opportunity, to serve individual and collective flourishing, and to enhance, not replace, human dignity. That's a very different set of design criteria than how do we automate this function or what's the ROI? When we design AI from its radical purpose outward, we get very different systems. This is often a very provocative point for practitioners. And again, I invite you to put your thoughts in the chat. Does that framing resonate or challenge how AI is being deployed in your own organization? What's the core purpose of workforce education and human resources? Workforce education exists to develop the whole person, not just the productive worker. Its radical purpose is to build knowledge, skills, and capacity that enables people to engage in meaningful, dignified, economically viable work and to adapt as the world changes around them. Human resources at its best is not about managing humans as resources. That framing alone tells you something. HR's radical purpose is to advocate for individual dignity, to build equitable systems, and to ensure that people can contribute fully and be treated with respect they deserve as human beings. Together, workforce education and human resources create the conditions under which people can thrive, not just perform. What is the core purpose of organization development and change? I'll anchor this slide in Cummings and Worley's foundational definition. OD is the system-wide application of behavioral science knowledge to plan development, improvement, and reinforcement of strategies, structures, and processes that lead to organizational effectiveness. But I want to unpack that a little further. The radical purpose of OD and change is not just to make organizations more effective. It's to make them more genuinely good. And what does that mean? Systems level thinking, seeing the whole, not just the parts. Human-centered change, honoring the lived experiences of people navigating transformation. Sustained adaptive capacity, building an organization's intrinsic ability to learn, adapt, and improve. And ethical stewardship, recognizing that organizational health has societal implications, not just business implications. As OD and change practitioners are at their best stewards of individual, organizational, and human flourishing. That is a profound duty and one in which we must hold ourselves accountable, responsible, as well as answerable to. The definition of good. We moved from radical purpose to core purpose to now the definition of good. This is the philosophical and scientific heart of today's session. Robert S. Hartman was a philosopher and mathematician who spent his life trying to answer one question. Can good be defined with the same precision and objectivity as a mathematical proof? His answer, developed in his landmark 1967 work, The Structure of Value, was yes. And his framework, formal axiology, is the science of value. Not value as preference or opinion, but value as an objective property of things and actions. The foundational definition is elegant. Good is that which fulfills its concept. Simple, profound. A good knife cuts well. A good teacher enables genuine learning. A good organization develops people and serves its community. Good is not what we feel is nice. It's what fully embodies what the thing is supposed to be. This is a revolutionary shift. This concept tends to land differently for different audiences. And I acknowledge, for those trained in the humanities, this may feel like it reduces value to function. For those trained in the hard sciences, it may feel refreshingly precise. Both reactions are valid, and we'll see how they reconcile through the hierarchy. Hartman identified three distinct dimensions of value, each with different ethical weight. Understanding these dimensions changes how we evaluate everything. The first and highest is intrinsic value, the unique, irreplaceable worth of a person as a singular individual. Intrinsic value cannot be fully quantified. It cannot be averaged. It is the domain of empathy, dignity, love, meaning, and rich experiences. When we treat a person as a means to an end, as interchangeable, we're commuting what formal axiologists call a valuation perversion, regardless of how efficient the system is. The second is extrinsic value, the practical, functional value of something. How well does it perform its role? Does it work? Is it effective? This is the domain of performance, quality, and utility. The third dimension of value, and lowest in ethical weight, is systemic value. That is conformity to rules, categories, and systems. Does it comply with the standard? Does it match the defined criteria? Here's the critical insight. Most organizations manage primarily at the systemic and extrinsic levels. We create policies, measure performance, and track compliance. But when we stop there, when we never evaluate to the intrinsic level, we miss the most important dimension of value. We may be operating efficiently and in compliance while failing the people we serve. There's a lot to unpack here, a lot to absorb. I want you to consider asking yourself this question. Where does most of your organization's evaluation framework focus? Systemic, extrinsic, or intrinsic? So what does good mean in practice? Let's apply the definition directly across our domains. What does a good AI system look like? By Hartman's definition, is one that fully embodies what it is supposed to be. At the systemic level, it complies with ethical and legal frameworks. At the extrinsic level, it actually works accurately, reliably, without perpetuating bias. At the intrinsic level, it honors the unique worth of every individual it touches. It augments human judgment rather than replacing it. A good HR professional isn't just compliant and effective. They genuinely advocate for the intrinsic worth of every employee as a whole person, not just a productivity unit. A good OD&C practitioner doesn't just implement change efficiently. They ensure that the change process itself honors the lived experience and impact on the people navigating it. The moment we apply the hierarchy, it becomes clear most of our systems are optimized for systemic and extrinsic value. The intrinsic dimension is where the real work is. Applying the framework. So how do we practically and pragmatically pull all this together? Applying the framework. Let's make this concrete. Good AI through the axiology lens. When we run AI through the hierarchy of value, we get a very specific and demanding set of criteria. Systemic value. Good AI is governed. It has policies, audits, risk frameworks. The NIST AI risk management framework is a strong example of systemic level work. Extrinsic value. Good AI performs well in the real world, not just in testing environments. It is accurate, reliable, and does not perpetuate the biases of historical data. Intrinsic value. Good AI honors the unique worth of every individual it affects. It is designed to expand access, support human dignity, and augment judgment, not replace it. Most AI development today focuses heavily on the extrinsic. Does it work? And is it catching up on the systemic? Is it compliant? But intrinsic level design is still rare. That is the frontier where workforce education, HR, and OD and change scholars and practitioners need to be present. And please feel free to do a deeper look into the slides. I'm just speaking to a few points on the good aspects of workforce education, HR, OD, and change. For workforce education and HR, the pattern is the same. Compliance frameworks, performance metrics, and then what about the whole person? Individual development, psychological safety, and a genuine commitment to human potential represent intrinsic level practice. For OD and change, good change management isn't just structured and effective. It centers the lived experience of people navigating disruption. Participatory design, trauma-informed change leadership, and practices that sustain psychological safety are all intrinsic level commitments. Organize for good. Putting this all together. When AI, workforce education, HR, and OD and change align around radical purpose, when they all answer the question, what does it mean to be truly good? Through the lens of Hartman's hierarchy of value, something extraordinary becomes possible. Organizations develop people holistically. AI serves human flourishing. Change processes center on dignity and authentic engagement. And the measure of success is no longer just profit or compliance. It includes the intrinsic worth of every individual the organization affects. This is what Hartman aspired towards and what he called organize for good. It's not a destination. It's a process and direction. It's a commitment to the radical purpose at the root of all these fields. So, what are the takeaways and some key points here? Before we open for discussion, let me crystallize the 5 key takeaways. Purpose is foundational. It is the anchor, not the decoration of our work. Good can be defined formally, rigorously, and objectively, not just felt. The hierarchy of value matters. When we only optimize at the systemic or extrinsic level, we miss the most important dimension, intrinsic human worth. AI demands the purpose question. Technology cannot answer what it is for. Only humans can. And the disciplines that study human systems can. Organized for good is the aspiration. Aligning AI, workforce education, HR, and OD and change around radical purpose creates organizations that are genuinely transformative and for the greater good. So this brings me to our Q&A. I've listed some questions here, and I want to open it up and capture some of the thoughts and curiosities that have maybe shown up in the chat. But I want you to take a look. Feel free to respond to any of them or raise whatever has been sitting with you throughout the session. What is the radical purpose of your work? And does your day-to-day practice reflect it? Where do you see your organizations operating primarily at the systemic or extrinsic level? And what would it take to elevate to the intrinsic? What would it mean for your organization to be truly organized for good? I've included a curated reference list on the slide here. Feel free to use these, share them with colleagues, bring them into your research and practice. I will bring up the Q&A slide again. I just want to finish here and then we can get into some dialogue and discussion. And I want to thank everyone genuinely for the quality of your attention today. You'll find my contact information on this final slide deck. Please reach out. I'd love to continue the conversation. Additionally, please take a moment to complete the feedback survey, and I will provide that slide with a QR code shortly. Your input directly shapes the quality of this series, and I appreciate having the opportunity to share my thoughts around where my purpose is, where our purpose is, and where our impact can be when we truly achieve and move towards goodness.
Yes, there is a question in the Q&A, and the question is, how can we show middle and high students use AI, not just copy and paste?
And this is going to be sort of a radical response. It's getting at the core, answering the core question of what's the purpose of the AI in that setting or context. Can it enhance their quality of life, their learning, et cetera, and to what point? Right before I got on this webinar, I was having a meeting around some of Hartman's work that hasn't been published yet. And in this unpublished document, which was written in 1957, I believe, he is asking for people to do deep learning. And I don't think there's a replacement for that. And I think that just goes hand in hand with the work that we all do, and to embed that into the mindsets of our younger students. And it may be, that may be radical. And it's not a pushback on the advancement of technology. I think it's putting it in its proper place, because there can be value at it. I used AI for preparation of this webinar, and it definitely made things a little bit more efficient, more effective than what I used to do 10, 15 years ago. So I don't
Yes,
know if
there is a
that
question.
helps. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry. There's a question in the chat as well. How I would be curious to hear examples of metrics companies may use to measure how change is positively impacting intrinsic value of people.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And although Hartman has created this science around value and how we perceive value in the world and create value in the world, and in my own work, um, it's this concept of self-evidence and the richness of experiences. And it's very relational. The intrinsic dimension for me, um, no matter how much you try and slice and dice engagement survey data to get at the intrinsic level, it will always come up short. And there's no replacement for the belly to belly development of relationships in an organization, whether that be your subordinate, um, a peer, a colleague, your direct reports, a CEO, in relation to its workforce. That's irreplaceable. And I think the measurement comes in the dialogue and the richness of that dialogue. Um, Intrinsic value is self-evident, and you can get at that through dialogue, relationships, and a professor that I've had early on in my doctoral work mentioned that it's about the relationship stupid.
Okay.
There's no
Thank you for
replacement for the relationships.
Thank you. Thank you for answering the question. There are a couple of things in the chat as well. I can read this to you. I work for the federal government, and AI is only being used by individuals to improve their written communication. I think that organizations are waiting to see what guardrails will be put on the use of AI at larger organizations. Sorry, this moved. And the question is, what are your thoughts about AI guardrails?
Yeah, the cat's out of the bag. And in part and parcel because we haven't asked the fundamental, radical, and core purpose of AI question. Um, and now that the cat's out of the bag, how do we put guardrails and parameters around what already is out there? And again, it's the science of value provides a really nice foundation for exploring an answer to that question. And I think we have to we have to measure or we have to evaluate the systemic value of AI from a concept standpoint, right? And in one of the slides, I had put systemic serves extrinsic serves intrinsic. So conceptually, AI does have the ability to impact at the intrinsic level depending on how it's used. And I think we have to be very critical of and embed policies around how we govern this, not just locally, but also internationally. And that is a tall order to ask. And it comes down to us being sort of revolutionary in how we show up as individuals and how we use it, as well as collectively.
So thank you for answering those questions. And if you have a question or if you want to ask your question live, please let us know. We still have time to answer your questions. You can share your thoughts as well. And Professor, maybe you can elaborate more on Oh, there's another question here. Don't we need to ask these questions more broadly around the issue of work? AI is going to be systematic and extrinsic because work and unfortunately education is becoming systematic and extrinsic.
Yeah, Georgiana, great question. And that is exactly what prompted me to do this webinar topic. And it is to slow down and stop and pause and ask better questions, deeper questions. Um, and the framework around the hierarchy of value gives us a beautiful model to decide what questions to ask. It's critical. It's critical. Um, AI in and of itself is benign. It depends on how we choose to use it. And as human beings, we are the guardrails, which is going to require intentional legal, regulatory guidelines to be embedded.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And if I may elaborate on what you said earlier about AI, that it is built, but we still don't know why it is built. We know what it is for, what we can use it for, but how, etc. That's what you said. Can you elaborate more on that? What do you exactly mean? Because I found that very interesting.
Can you repeat that? You broke up a little bit. I'm sorry, Marcia.
Oh, I was talking about AI. You spoke about that the builders, we know how to use it, but we still need to ask questions about why it is built. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. So, you know, this science, the science of value, is not very well known. Okay, it's very esoteric, but it's there, and it gives us a foundation to ask better questions around AI or any technology for that matter. Um, and what is its fundamental purpose? What's its core purpose? Okay. And in answering that question, are we going to create the attributes required to fulfill that purpose? Okay. And if we don't, what are the risks? What are the ramifications? And what can we do to mitigate, minimize, and eliminate the negative impact or the devaluation of humans, of our environment, of our future? Yeah, these are powerful, these are very important questions.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. There is another suggestion and also a question in the chat. Someone found an article of IKEA and it read as follows. IKEA treats values such as togetherness, simplicity, and caring for people and the planet as practical decision criteria. Those values show up in real questions leaders use to evaluate any AI initiative. So the questions now are, does this simplify or complicate the work? Does this support their coworkers and free up time for more meaningful work? And does this align with fairness, inclusion, and sustainability?
Yeah, great, Grace. This is beautiful. Um, the the quality of our relationships is really going to depend on the quality of our questions and what questions we're asking. And I'll try and tackle this one by one. Does this simplify or complicate the work? I would say it actually, you know, this is complex. We deal with complex systems, complex dynamics, but it's not complicated. I actually put that in one of my slides. It's complex, but not complicated. And the clarity that can be brought by using something like the structure of value or the hierarchy of value, it really simplifies things, right? So what are good ideas? What is a good worker? What is a good outcome that improves the quality of life for people in the workplace? I think it simplifies things. It may sound like it's touchy-feely, but the reality is, and I'm biased towards this, and people want this in the workplace. They want to feel safe to be human and valued to be human. And I think these questions are absolutely essential, non-negotiables that have to be shown, that have to show up in how leaders interact with who they're leading. The second question, does it support their coworkers and free up time for more meaningful work? Heck yeah. I think that's just a no-brainer. I think the dynamics that would show up in an environment and a culture like that, even though it may be a little touchy-feely, I think the paradox is that you wind up having people that are more committed, more engaged, more fulfilled. And does this align with fairness, inclusion, and sustainability? The intrinsic lens automatically addresses all that. It addresses injustices. It addresses inequities. It levels the playing field that we all have infinite and intrinsic value.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That is the last question. When our day-to-day work does not reflect the radical purpose of our work, what is there for us to fall back?
So, the reality is, right, the science gives us a structure of value. The intrinsic is greater than the extrinsic is greater than the systemic. And then in reality, how does that show up? It's intrinsic and extrinsic and systemic. And my point is that we're human and we have misperceptions and we don't always have clarity about our many purposes. And that's okay. This is a process. And it's not about falling back for me. I think it's about learning in the process about ourselves, about those around us, and creating value where we can under the situation in which we're in. So it's very context driven. And I don't mean that to say that the situation should interfere with the integrity around the choices we make, and so that it doesn't violate the intrinsic and infinite value of another human being. I think that's our North Star, right? And I think systemically, we have to ask ourselves, is what I'm thinking in this moment going to create value? Is it good? Is it good for me? Is it good for those around me? And these are questions, habits of mind that we have to shift towards understanding our own purpose, right? That's very existential. Understanding our own purpose, understanding how we want to impact the world through the work that we do, whatever that is, and what ideas do we have to make things better. So I think to answer your question simply is to just understand that you're human, and number two, the choice we make and reflection of the hierarchy of value can give us some wisdom in answering that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Eddie, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes. So there are no questions, and this was a very informative, very important discussion as well. So I thank you very much for presenting this to us. I thank our participants as well. Thank you everyone from everywhere who joined to be part of those webinar series. So please feel free to send your questions to Edward, to stay connected with us through our Zoom social media. We will just post the videos on our YouTube channel. So stay connected, and please sign up for the next webinar series, and we will see you soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, and bye bye
Thanks, everybody.
everyone
Be
from
well.
Every Time Zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.